Andy Warhol's famously said in the future, everyone will be world famous for 15 minutes. People of Reddit who have had their 15 minutes, what was your 15 minutes of fame? I won $5,000 and a lawnmower on The Price is Right. I was in a lawsuit with Kanye West for the cryptocurrency coin that I was a developer for in 2014. How is the coin doing now? I was buying a banana in a supermarket. They were shooting a commercial there and I was there at the same time. They asked me if I would like to join. It was my lunch break and had nothing better to do. So I walked downstairs to a professional setup. Was there for 5 minutes. They took 10 pictures and gave me €100. A few weeks later I saw my face all over my country and at the homepage on the website. They did not mention that the commercial would be that big. €100 is pretty good for 5 minutes on a lunch break. Everyone at my job was evacuated and eventually had to go home. A reporter on site asked me what the scope of the danger was and I replied I dunno. I gotta go home and pet my cat. They used the clip. I like your priorities there, Charlie. When I was in high school I made a playlist on YouTube of grunge music. I made it a public playlist even though it was just for my own listening. Turns out, the playlist gets millions of views and I even had bands from around the world contact me to put their music in my playlist. It fizzled out after a few years, but every now and again I remember messaging bands back and forth asking why they thought they belonged in my playlist. Meanwhile my dumbass was like 16 at the time lol. I recreated What's My Age Again by Blink-182's GTA V. It took off immediately and ended up on dozens of news sites like Entertainment Weekly, Huffington Post and even Rolling Stone. The band also posted it on their Facebook page which led to it trending. I was a baby model for those backpacks that have a baby slot. Mum and dad took me shopping for a raincoat for my dad when customer assistant just asked if they could borrow me for some modeling of their new stock due to me being so calm. I got a letter of thanks from the store manager with Polaroids and laminates for my future modeling portfolio. My late dog, son was home on break. Had been playing frisbee with the dog. Got home from work and son told me the dog was internet famous. Why he took a pic of the dog W frisbee in mouth while pooping and titled it animal version of taking your cell phone to the bathroom. At that point there were over 300k views. Eventually over 1.5 meters and ripped off by Menet. Just googled it and it's still floating around. Me and a buddy survived a shooting in Northeast Philly, only to have another shooting happen 2 days later. Hope you survived the second shooting as well. Misha Collins retweeted one of my tweets and followed me for like 2 weeks. Then he unfollowed me. This reminded me, a few years back I had a pretty popular Tumblr dedicated to the supernatural gifs I obsessively made. Got close to 90k followers in a couple years. Met a new girl at work who casually says she really liked Supernatural. I mentioned that I had a Tumblr and when I told her the name she flipped. Apparently I was her favorite blog. I felt like a famous person for all of 5 seconds. Not me, but my grandmother was briefly ranked as the 6th best player on the global leaderboards for Bejeweled Blitz. My grandfather has 6 top 100 Clash of Clans accounts. Freaking nerd die. Back when I was in college, doing the stanky leg dance was pretty popular. I was on drumline and I guess ESPN was coming back from commercial break to our football game and they zoom in on the band. I'm there standing on a bench, playing cowbell and doing the stanky leg. They kept zooming in on me until the play started. Maybe just 15 seconds but I'll take it. When I was in 1st grade, I got 1st place in a reading contest at school. The grand prize was a $100 Borders gift card, and the top 5 readers got to pie the principal in the face. The other 4 kids seemed too scared to properly pie the principal, barely touching his nose before dropping the pie. Then it was my turn. I slammed that pie into his face and broke the principal's nose. I ended up on the front page of our small town newspaper, and the principal was in a dunk tank the next year. Lol. I read the last part as drunk tank. I thought you put him into a downward spiral of alcoholism. I took my kid to Europe and she slept everywhere, asleep in every single photo, so I took her picture with strangers, police officers, soldiers, a waiter, a bride, couple of dogs. The photo series was pretty popular on a few travel pages. It wasn't a huge deal, but my rock band got to play on live radio, 94.1, a few years ago. I'm a keyboardist, so nobody cared too much. Hey buddy, keyboards are dope. About 20 years ago, my parents' giant Norway spruce was chosen to be the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree. The tree cutting ceremony turned into a block party attended by the governor and every Nick TV news outlet. Met tons of celebrities, politicians at the lighting ceremony. Did interviews with NBC, MTV, Nat Geo, etc. My parents and I did a segment on The Daily Show. It was a whirlwind couple of weeks, but NBC really hooked us up. When I was 5 I used to walk to my nana's house after school, which was around the corner, and my mum would pick me up from there. My nana wasn't home one day, so I freaked out and I went on an hour-long walk home. Mum wasn't there, so I walked back to nana's and no one was there. So I just walked around town for a couple hours. All the while I was wondering why so many police cars were around. I eventually went to the police station where mum was waiting for me. It turns out they got the whole police force of my town in the town over looking for me. But seriously, at least 15 cops drove right past me and I was a pretty distinct looking child. No, we're looking for a lost child. That child looks like he knows exactly where he is going. I was left locked in a car as a baby and got a small article in the local newspaper about it. You peaked early. They shot a commercial for immunization at my daycare when I was about 4 early 80s. I distinctly remember the day, as we all got to pick funny hats, and I was PBC. I ended up with a giant red cowboy hat, Alberta, and everyone else had cooler hats. Commercial came out, and it's just me with my ridiculous giant hat. They would recycle the commercial every couple years, and all through junior high and high school, I'd inevitably get someone saying I know you from somewhere, as I looked pretty much the same as my 4-year self. I'd let them sort it out on their own, and wait a couple days before they'd come running up yelling, "You're that kid from the commercial." I tried desperately to get a copy of it from the Alberta government for my wedding a couple years ago, but they couldn't find it, despite some very amused and helpful staff. What was the year it was made? I can find it for you. I was on the top 20 bronze leaderboard on Duolingo. It doesn't get any better than that. A few years ago I made a website where you could mail people a bag of dongs anonymously. That seemed to get a lot of attention. A co-worker of mine got this. We laughed about it and speculated. Turned out to be a girl 1 aisle over who broke down when questioned about it by HR. She wrote him an apology letter and even offered to let him watch her eat the bag of dongs as recompense. She was an interesting human. I got robbed when I worked at a servo once and beat the robber up. Was in the paper and the police said they were using the footage for their Christmas party video compilation. My brother, during a high school wrestling match, taunted Ric Flair's son after the winning move in Triple OT with a woo and strut. Started a brawl which included Mr. Flair. Wrestling MSG boards at the time hated my bro and the story made it into a Sports Illustrated. A year ago, I appeared on a news channel behind the reporter accidentally walking right into a street sign while messaging my mom. I got laughed at for at least 1 month after that. I had a post on this Reddit account blow up on our videos and had small newspapers report on the video giving me credit as a Reddit user. The part I'm most happy about is the video had like 10k views when I found it and now has about 1 million. My parents adopted my sister when I was 7. The government tried to stop the adoption. They threw everything they could at my folks. Dragged my mum through the mud, said she was unfit to be a mother, used her benign brain tumor against her, said she would die before she could raise us. Then they lied and told my parents that my sister had already been given away. My parents hired a lawyer, fought back and won. We brought my sister home when she was 2. She had pneumonia, bronchitis, worms and was severely malnourished. The orphanage said she would have died within weeks if we hadn't. We were on the front page of the national paper the girl red tape tried to hide. There is a specific popular YouTuber whose videos I watch occasionally. Every time I comment on her videos, my comment gets 13k plus likes and I have no idea why. I need to see these comments now. I accidentally helped a hoax news story blow up. It ended up becoming a global story for a whole summer. I knew from the beginning it was bulls and was terrified someone would trace part of it back to me. Got my wiener stuck in a public pool. That's all. I spent a few years as a secret shopper for some side money. Hint, you don't actually make a lot of money, but I like doing restaurants because your meal is calmed. Anyway, there was one Chinese restaurant that I gave a good review to, and this apparently made them so happy that they created a big window poster with full review printed on it and hung it right next to the door. That was almost a decade ago, and last time I passed through, it was still there, lol. Got a post to the front page, and now I know Reddit has a weird fetish to frick Danny DeVito and the Queen of England. Not me, but my mom was famous in a hospital some years ago because she was the most unluckiest person with sicknesses that are rare. When she was a kid, she always easily had allergic reactions to lots of things. Then some years before having me, she had a bloof infection. Then when I was 7, she was the 7th person in the world to have a sickness that made her spleen grow very fast and almost died because the doctors didn't realize that the reason why she was so sick was because her spleen weighed 5 kg, causing internal bleeding. So she was famous for that in the hospital because she was the first person in France to have that sickness. It was not a cancer, and I don't remember the name. I dressed up as George Tsoukalos when he went to HistoryCon 2018 last August, and he gave me a hug and the pin he was wearing. The History Channel played the clip of us doing his iconic pose and him hugging me. I don't think he knows my name or thinks about his time at the World Trade Center in Manila very often, but I had a good time at the convention. When I was the only emo kid in the school, someone offered a penny, literally a penny, to a guy to beat me up, and he took it. School staff didn't care too much, but the other students realized how fricked up the situation was and the bullying simply stopped, and I could enjoy the last year in high school. That person must have lost his last brain cell that day. I was in Paris with a couple of friends, and there was a girl doing soccer tricks in a park. No one could steal the ball from her. I thought it would be a good idea to go and try. I got nutmegged and found out later that she had 1.7 million followers on Insta and that I had appeared on her newest video. It was and still is funny to this very day. I got internet famous for like a week for being the first person to ask for framed photos of a celebrity in my hotel room. Thankfully, lots of people copied me after, and you would never be able to tell who was first, because really, it was a stupid thing to be known for. I was on Dr. Phil around 2005 discussing my, and others, experience with schizophrenia. They flew me, my husband, my doctor, and his wife, to Los Angeles for 3 days. They put us up in a fancy hotel, drove us around in a limo, gave me a makeover, generally the star treatment. Dr. Phil himself was very kind to me, always asking if I was okay. What surprised me was the amount of pancake makeup on his face and head. I could see cracks in it. Was all over the newspaper, like every week or so as a star athlete for a big sports team. People would recognize me in public places and take pictures with me and stuff. Until one day the team I was playing for went bankrupt and suddenly nobody cared anymore, and I was kinda forgotten. When my wife and I were on TLC's Strange Sex. I sold a gun a few years ago. That dude used to murder someone. I had to testify in the murder trial. Dateline NBC picked up the story, and I was interviewed by none other than the legendary Keith Morrison. It was a surreal experience. I found a solid gold snail in a tree stump and got to be on Good Morning America. I'm also trying hard to sell books on Amazon. I was a mathlete in Mean Girls. Nicolas Cage said my name on Jimmy Fallon one night because of a Nicolas Cage themed art show I put on in San Francisco. Then it was over. I told a joke on Reddit that got a massive positive response. Someone posted about how Joseph Stalin played a practical joke on his guards. He had given them orders not to enter his room for any reason. Later, he screamed and pretended to be dying. When his guards rushed in to help him, he ordered them executed. So in the comments I said the difference between a good joke and a great one is the execution. Not world famous or even close, but I had a front page story in the student newspaper that had relatively wide local circulation while I was at journalism school. Another time I appeared on the TV news as a man in the street being asked a couple of questions. In the early 1990s, my small Lulu volume had 15 copies ordered by the local public library system for their local author's archive, but isn't listed as being in that library system anymore and otherwise didn't sell or get mentioned since then. When I was 4 years old, my aunt left me at a KB Toys at the mall and left shopping. I got bored and ended up walking home, which was about 4 or 5 miles away. I ended up in the newspaper while my aunt ended up in jail. I have this very faint memory of the librarian at school knowing who I was before I had ever even met her. Haha. You have been visited by the magical sugar jar Puggo. He'll only share his sweetener if you comment Surga please, Mr. Papa. Thanks for watching. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.